Hey there, welcome to Coaching with Tally. We are here every day at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Today we are in a series all about increasing your level of peace. And today we're talking about assumptions. Why do we make them? How do we stop? What is it that it creates in our life in the way of detracting from this place of peace? So making assumptions is a really significant thing to take a look at. If you want to increase your peace, look at the assumptions that you're making and how it is affecting your life. So we're going to talk about that today. My name is Tally. I'm a life and personal development coach, and I work with leaders to create lives of overflowing impact in the world that are centered in a place of joy. Getting leaders aligned to who it is they most truly are, firing on all cylinders. We look at every area of life and getting you into this place of overflow in your life. Because you've created a life that you love living. So can then overflow that into the world. So today, talking about making assumptions. So making an assumption is basically telling yourself that something is true when you don't really have confirmed evidence of that. And we do it all the time. It is a constant state of something that our brain does because we really like the security of having an answer to something. Our brain is always looking to answer questions. We're creating questions intuitively all the time in our brain and looking to solve those, looking to answer those questions. And so one of the ways that we do this is by making assumptions. And there's a really simple way we can begin to shift this, and we're going to get into that and actually have an activation at the end of today all about what you can do, a specific tangible thing that you can implement starting today that can help shift the way that we make assumptions. So basically our reasoning mind. I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on here in your brain and tell you kind of the why behind, because I think sometimes if we can understand why we're doing it, we can catch ourselves doing it easier. So our reasoning mind, always having these questions, always wanting to look for patterns and have an answer to something actually makes us feel a lot more secure. And so we actually don't see things the way that they are. This is a quote by my first life coach, Chet Scott. Incredible man, incredible coach. And I remember him saying over and over again, you don't see things the way that they are. You see things the way that you are. Meaning that we have this lens that we see through where we assume that the other person or other people in the world are coming from the same place that we're coming from. That we have the same base of understanding that we have the same that they feel the same way that we do, that they value the same things that we value. We have this belief that other people get where we're coming from, when really we are often coming from very different places. So we don't see things the way that they are. We see things the way that we are. In some ways, our brains are actually wired to make assumptions. So without realizing it, we're always searching for these patterns to free up mental space in our brains. There's a book, a really great book. I'm always looking to resource you guys with great resources, people and tools and books. So a book that I would recommend is called The 4 Agreements, and it's by a man named Don Miguel Ruiz. And he has four areas that if you will tune these things up in your life, you set yourself up for a really peaceful, really fulfilling life. And he just really breaks it down into 4. The third agreement that he gets into is don't make assumptions. Like, look at how you're making assumptions and begin to shift into this place of just not making them. If we can get into a place where we're not making assumptions, we actually bring so much more peace into our life. There are so many things that we do that in terms of this place making assumptions that actually set us up for a lot of grief in our life. So we create a lot of unnecessary drama by making assumptions. We can create scenarios in our minds where we play things out that actually don't exist because we're attaching meaning and that's inaccurate. We're attaching inaccurate meaning. We're like, oh, okay, their motive in this is whatever, like from our lens, like they must be trying to disrespect me, or they must be like they really don't care about me, or I'm trying to just think of some different things. A lot of times we run it through our filter. They're making me responsible. This is one that I often have because I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And so I have this like responsibility lens where I will assume people are trying to make me responsible for something when that might not be happening at all. That's a lens I'm running it through. And then I'll kind of have this pushback like, I'm not responsible for your emotions, or I'm not responsible for it. Like I'll have this almost defensiveness sometimes because I'm running it through this this responsibility lens that might not be there at all for somebody else. So that's an example in my own life that I've had to catch myself running this assumption, through my own brain. So assumptions basically just set us up for suffering. So how do we stop? How do we stop making assumptions? How do we stop setting ourselves up in this way? One is just to really pay attention and notice when you're doing it. So if it's something that I'm thinking that's actually based on factual reality, or is this something that I'm filling in the blanks? Is this something that I'm running this through my own lens and beginning to just start looking at that? And often we so want to be right about what we think about something that we'll actually create stuff. We'll actually kind of make stuff up to fill in the blanks, to be right about things. So sometimes just asking the question, like, okay, the story that I'm making up here right now is that you want me to be responsible for this situation that I'm actually not responsible for. And they'll be like, no, that's not actually what's going on. They can then fill in the reality of the situation. But just being able to say the story that I'm telling myself about this brings clarity. Or if you're on the other end, I love working with other leaders who are excellent communicators. And one of the signs of somebody being an excellent communicator is it almost appears like they're over communicating, but they're not. So they will often be like, okay, so just to clarify, I want to make sure I'm getting what you're saying, and they'll repeat back. It's a form of active listening. It's very powerful, and it actually brings a lot of security into a relationship and into a dynamic when somebody just communicates. So what I'm getting from what you just said is, or let me make sure I'm understanding correctly. What I'm hearing is, or, just to clarify. So those kinds of, just start a sentence with just to clarify, and then say what you're seeing in what they just said, or to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, or what I hear you saying. If you start some sentences out with that, and then you reflect back using the other person's words, using the other person's what you hear them saying, what you feel them saying, and then say, is that it? Or do you want to add anything to that? And then being able to say yes, and also the piece about, whatever, or to be able to add to that. It creates so much security in a dynamic, in a relationship, especially if there's conflict involved. This is even more, I would say, challenging to do naturally and something worth practicing, but also so much more important, because when we're in a place of conflict, our brain is in that state of fight or flight, and it actually doesn't hear very well. We don't listen very well. So whether you're just working on a project, or you're, with a friend, or you're in a place where you're trying to work through something that's challenging, clear communication is so significant and so important, and will help you avoid these assumptions. So that's kind of just active listening 101. Here's a little tool for you. This isn't your activation, but I will say, if you are in a conflict situation, if you're with, somebody that you're in regular relationship with, whether it's a partner or a roommate or a family member, and you have regular conflict, this is a tool I would so recommend, this tool of active listening. And something that can help you just remember that you're in this state of active listening is to just have something, a pen or whatever is sitting around on the counter or the table, and just use that. And whoever has the pen is the one talking. And then you basically you just say enough that's kind of able to be retained. You don't just go on and on, but hand the pen to the other person, and they say, what I hear you saying is that you feel like this, and when this happens, you experience it this way. Whatever it is you just heard. You have the pen, and then you say, is that all? Hand the pen back. They get to elaborate if there's anything more until they're done, and then hand the pen to the other person and say, I can understand how this would feel, or that, whatever. You kind of empathetically reflect back what you understand about that, and then get to share from your perspective. But just having that pen or that spoon or whatever you have, that tangible item, only the person who has that is talking, and then you just kind of take turns back and forth. It takes a little bit longer, but actually it doesn't take longer because it's so much clearer. You end up not fighting and getting into conflict. You end up really hearing each other, and you feel heard, you feel understood, you feel like there's clarity. And if you're listening to understand, not to be right, it goes really a lot further. But making assumptions, that's one way to avoid making assumptions, is to really just clarify, to communicate really, really well, and to ask questions, like staying in this place of curiosity. So help me understand, you feel like this, and I don't want to make assumptions here. I want to really understand where you're coming from. So this is what I'm hearing. So just reflecting back what you hear, being an active listener, staying in a place of curiosity, being able to communicate from the lens of this is a story that I'm making up in this situation, like the story I tell myself about this is, so that you are communicating where you're coming from and giving somebody else basically the benefit of not having to make up assumptions. It just supports your relationship so much when there is clear communication and active listening involved. So my activation for you today is to find at least 2 conversations today, and it does not need to be conflict-oriented ones, just 2 conversations today where you use the phrase, so just to clarify, and then you repeat back what it is that you're hearing, just to get in this practice of great communication and not making assumptions, and like be happy to be wrong about something. That's the other thing, is like getting your brain out of this place where you have to be right about what you're, like how you're interpreting something. Be curious and be great to be wrong about it. And it's not even necessarily a right wrong, but just clarity. You want clarity, you want to be curious about what that is. So I'll take a few of these questions here. Yes, sometimes I just admit I'm going to practice active listening. Here's what I understand, ... Awesome. Many times people make an assumption based on perception and then create expectations later on. Yes, that's so true. That's so true. So the more clear we can be in our communication, and then the more curious we can be as an active listener about what somebody else is communicating, and then just almost over communicating, but it's not over communicating. It's just we're used to making stuff up and making assumptions rather than being clear. So when somebody can repeat back to you, like what I hear you saying is, and they say what you said, it's so refreshing. Like, oh man, this person is really getting me. And it just builds trust. And then when you're doing that for other people, same thing. So be an active listener. Your activation today is to find at least two conversations where you repeat back just to clarify or just to make sure I'm understanding, and then you just reflect what you just heard. So practice that, have fun with it, and lean into just not making assumptions, but communicating really clearly. Have fun, guys. With that, I hope it brings more peace into your life. We'll be back again tomorrow with another way of bringing more peace into your life, increasing the peace for you in this season. Sending you so much love today. Blessings.